Previously on Fish Chunk, I finished lamping my way to 25 fishing, and finally lived up to the title of the series, catching our very first fish on the account. Progress was slow, with each pike requiring just over 25 farmers for a single drop of bait. But nevertheless, I pressed on, adding another 10,000 farmers to the drop log. And with the help of my previous stash of bait, I made it all the way to level 50 fishing. Along the way I hit a couple of other little milestones, like 65 cooking, 75 ranged, 70 farming, and inched ever closer to my very first treasure trail completion on the account. And with that, we begin. Stood in my wheat field after the excitement of last episode's pike fishing bonanza, and having just managed to miss my level 75 hit point message, it began to dawn on me just quite how long I was going to spend stuck here, collecting fishing bait. Given the distance between the two farmer spawns, there is little benefit from running between them, nor does world hopping really help, since by the time the post-combat time has run down and I've loaded into the next world, I might as well have stayed where I was in the first place. And so, inspired by Seer Supreme's similar grind, killing men and women, in RuneScape, at the Seer's pub to gather bait for his pike fishing grind, I thought I'd see if sniping them across the chunk border would work any better than farmers. Between the problem of losing any arrows used to lure them across the boundary, the risk of one-shotting them and losing the drop as well, and the infrequency with which they come into range of the bow in the first place, this was just a terrible idea, so back to the field I trudged. Consigned to my fate then, and with a good few thousand bait left to gather, I began thinking about what other side goals I could start chipping away at as I pushed on with Project Fish. First, I'm always on the hunt for ways to free up a little more inventory space, and with a long way still to go on the ranging grind, as I hit level 77, my arrow supplies are looking a bit low, so the time has come, I think, to work through that big stack of headless arrows. All those steel arrow tips will cost a pretty penny though, and so I'll also need, task 2, to lay my hands on some more GP. With the total cost for the arrow tips laying at about 210k, my old strat of selling excess compost to the farm shop just wasn't going to cut it. And having sworn off moss giants for the time being, I couldn't rely on their alchable drops either, so I'd need to find an alternative way of raising some funds. For an important spot of context here, I was at this stage about to fly overseas for a couple of weeks. I didn't expect to have a lot of free time, so being restricted to mobile gameplay, it felt like the ideal opportunity to level some thieving and address that GP issue. So, guards it was. Juggling clue scrolls on mobile is an absolute hassle though, and with 3 on the floor I couldn't face losing one now, so maybe I'll get lucky and finish my first casket.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
Before all that though, I'd been rather fortunate on the lap front, and already had enough bait for the next level, so there's 51 fishing. Followed for the umpteenth time by that troll clue step from Jagex that I'm only just unable to reach. Bit fed up of seeing this one now. Every cloud has a silver lining though, as once again I was blessed straight afterwards with clue step number 4. To summarise quickly for those unfamiliar with this technique, the game doesn't make any distinction between player A, who starts with 1 clue scroll and completes each step in order that it sends them on until receiving a casket, and player B, who starts with multiple clue scrolls of the same tier and completes just the first step on each one. So long as neither player receives a fresh drop of a new clue scroll, the game doesn't care which route is taken. A step is a step, and for easy treasure trails, once 4 have been completed, that guarantees a casket. So what am I hoping to obtain by doing this? Well, first to mind are of course uniques. Who doesn't want some distinctive clothing for their account, especially when it's something with a backstory, as any clue reward would be for a chunk man. There's plenty of options already in easy treasure trails like flared trousers, the ham joint, berets, team capes, and so on. Looking past those shinies though, it's the standard reward list where we stand to benefit the most. A steel or black pickaxe would be huge for future chunks, having already got access to the coal trucks and being just 1 roll away from iron ore south of the Legends Guild. And although I'm not working on a mage grind at the moment, a Staff of Air would still be pretty nice, if for nothing else than to use up the mind and chaos runes I've gathered from farmers, saving a couple more inventory spots. And there it is, with one clue left to spare, we have our casket. And what a fantastic one it is. In terms of what would help the account right now, it's honestly the best single item I could have received. The timing couldn't be much better either. I recorded this just one day before flying, meaning no need to keep juggling clue steps on mobile. First things first then, let's tidy up those rune stacks. Based on some sums I did for previous episodes, I started off with Crumble Undead, as it gave the optimal XP for each rune, even getting lucky with a bronze bar on the first kill. But seeing as I got some body runes from the casket as well, that could only mean one thing. That's right, who could forget about Cow Inspect meta? There's the first magic level, 57. The lore runes didn't last long though, as I'm already out of telegrabs. And then we were away. I hadn't played the chunk account on mobile much at all until this point, besides the occasional cycle of crops of the allotment, so I was a bit out of practice and this felt rather unfamiliar, but it came back to me soon enough. You may remember that last episode I'd stopped farming herbs for a bit, with the Master Farmer providing a couple of seed varieties that I'm not yet able to plant, like lantadymes and dwarf weeds, as well as a few more for which I don't already have a stack of noted herbs from regular farmers in my inventory, like toadflax and snapdragons. It just didn't seem worth sacrificing all that space at the time. Since I'm about to use up those earth and mind runes, however, as well as the stack of headless arrows, it might soon be time to revisit that decision. Let's not get ahead of ourselves though. As I finish off the last earth runes, I turn my attention to Thieving. Remember, it's around 210k I'm aiming for, to buy the steel arrow tips for all the fletching. And I can tell already that the guards aren't going to give me an easy time with this. As expected, my focus was on other things while overseas, so I don't have a huge amount of progress to show for the 2 weeks, but 44k is a start. Not much progress on the mind runes either, but that'll soon change. Here's 58 magic, and already the end of the runes. Or so I thought. Okay, for real this time, back to Thieving once again, where I soon hit level 72, past the 100k GP mark, level 73, and 1 million XP, have another huge batch of compost to sell, which nets me a further 9k GP, 74 thieving, and finally the magic number, to the Ranging Guild. Now, since I'm on a very strict budget here, I will only be purchasing 50 arrow tips on each world, meaning I'll almost certainly run out of world hops at some point in the process. To ease the boredom of Shopscape, I thought about making a bit about this strange wall texture, but Josh Isn't Gaming got there first. You know, things are desperate when there's competition over who gets to discuss the ambiguous mossy surface for content. I jest, but it does amuse me how many of us have hit a roadblock in the same rough area of the map. Between Extreme Gnome, my crew, Seer Supreme, Josh, Plague Chunk, and yours truly, there's plenty of action in Hemminster and the North Ardoyne farm. Good news for anyone holding stocks in foot pedals, I guess. Despite the repetition though, this does facilitate a bit more dialogue over shared aspects of the game. And so, picking up on another thread from Josh's recent video, and as an alternative to watching me world hop 600 times, please enjoy this short presentation on the rabbit hole that is studded armour, a familiar sight among Ranging Guild locked chunk accounts. It's an oft-repeated claim that such items exist in fantasy settings alone. This is a bit of an oversimplification though, both historically and in terms of game design. Pretty much any illustration of a European battle from roughly the 14th to 16th centuries is likely to feature at least one foot soldier who looks to be wearing a leather or fabric item of clothing, adorned with metal studs. These examples from the Osprey Men-at-Arms book on the Walls of the Roses are typical of what I'm describing. It's not even that uncommon to find these things being labelled in such reference books as just studded armour. So what gives? Well, in the case of the green leather armour worn by the soldier with a fire pot above his head in the centre of the image, known as a brigandine, and the example of a quilted fabric armour worn by the bowman on the right, the studs are there to support a series of thin metal plates held between the outer layers of material. Now, often in games we're used to encountering abstractions from the real world. The process of creating a set of plate armour, like the full harness worn by men-at-arms in the same time period as the brigandines we've encountered, is clearly a lot more involved than beating 5 stone-cold ingots of metal with a hammer for 3 seconds. Of course, in reality it involves all manner of fabric and leather fittings, buckles, rivets, as well as special undergarments with points to which the armour is affixed. And yet, we still know what the thing in-game represents. Were it just the crafting recipe that we had for studded armour in RuneScape, with its use of leather and metal studs, we might charitably suggest that the game is just taking a similar shortcut with its representation of a medieval brigandine, without requiring the production of some 100-odd metal plates as well. But, alas, the examine text puts paid to that idea. Those studs should provide a bit more protection, it says. So, while in RuneScape it does seem very much that the original designer of the studded armour in-game really did believe that such an item makes sense, based perhaps on examples that they'd seen in other games, it's not entirely clear that when any other fantasy franchise makes reference to studded armour, even if they omit to mention the presence of metal plates, that they've made the same oversight. By this point I'd made it through the complete world list once, and had encountered about 17 worlds that had a full stack of arrow shafts. Fans of the series will know I get a bit excited when I see these. Especially now, since the 30,000 I'd gathered already would leave me agonisingly short of level 60 fletching. But showing restraint in my spending for once, I was still resisting the urge to buy more arrow shafts, still holding out by the time I passed 20,000 arrow tips. And there's that hop limit. While brewing a cup of tea, however, I resolved that since I had finally got around to starting the fletching, I really should make the most of it and just press on to level 60. And so, while waiting for my world hops to accumulate once more, back to the guards I went for a bit more GP. But come on, which of you could see this coming? By the time I got back to the guild, someone had bought nearly all the arrow shafts on those worlds. So I did my best with what was left, scraping together another 2,000 arrow shafts. Not quite enough to hit 60 fletching yet, but closer than I was before. Arrow shafts means feathers, and feathers means chickens, so time for a spot of this. Pew! Never the most exciting of grinds, but there's the 2k gathered. And no sooner have I finished off the last of the headless arrows than... level 50 fletching. If only I had a knife to make that maple shortbow. Now, fletching's a quick skill, even as a chunk man, so to save you the spam of announcements, here's a short montage. And there's the end of that batch of arrows, leaving me roughly halfway from 59 to 60. I did take another quick peek in the guild at this point to see if there are any more shafts to buy, but the arrow shop can be a cruel mistress, and so the rest will have to wait for now. Fletching fails aside, with a little more inventory space reclaimed, it is high time to resume herb farming on the allotment. Meaning I'm back at the Master Farmer. Probably a good thing, given that I'm still yet to receive even a single Torstal seed as I pass 18,500 pickpockets. It is pure coincidence, I know, but remember what I said last time about those occasional little chains of random events occurring several times in a row? Not a helpful one this time, unfortunately, but there's 3 consecutive ricks. Back to pickpocketing, and here's a nice level, 75 thieving. For gem stalls, should I ever land the Ardoin market chunk. A book of knowledge puts me in spitting distance of my target for the next fishing level, just 2 bait left. And once again, what was I saying about random events? There's book number 2, River Time, putting me at 52 fishing. Slight crisis of confidence here about how many bait I still had to gather, so I decided to test once more both the running between farmer spawns technique and the constant world hopping method to see if either could improve my rates even a little. But alas, the extra 4 or 5 an hour really isn't worth the hassle of all this. And so having seen quite enough of the field for now, I made the difficult choice to switch to the other farmer spawn for a slight change of scenery. Well, you didn't think I was giving up on the grind, did you? Anyway, by the weekend I was feeling lucky enough to try again with the arrow shop, and success. Well, sort of. I overbought on a few worlds, having lacked confidence in how many more I'd find with a fresh stock, and thus ran out of GP once again. See, this is what happens when I don't make and stick to a spreadsheet. Fletchy fletchy, grindy grindy, and level 60, for which we were rewarded with another completable clue step, building up the stack once again. Plus 78 ranged. I think it was Frey who recently spoke about favourite and least favourite levels in terms of the numbers on stat screen. Well, for whatever reason, I just find 77 the most annoying level to look at, so this one always comes as a bit of a relief. Now, for continuity reasons, I'm leaving this clip in, but at this exact point in the grind, I don't really have that much use for Leo randoms anymore. Sure, those herb seeds that I can't grow do get a bit annoying to hold on to in the inventory, but with the amount of thieving I'm doing, I inevitably receive the same seeds again before long. And the same's true for any stacks of noted herbs I offload. So, for now, these are just an opportunity for a quick tidy up. And what better to remind myself of how long I've been doing this than a prayer level. Here's 60, still from burying regular bones. You know the routine by now. Bait gathered, off to the river, level 53. For a quick update on the whole fishing thing, so far I've received on average about 50% of the experience for every level, just from lamps, books of knowledge and Bob fishing randoms while trying to collect the bait. Should this continue, dare I say it, things are looking quite positive for the rest of the grind. And I couldn't have an entire episode without a farming level either, could I? So here's level 71. From the pace of clips at this point in the episode featuring some of the more notable levels, you'd be forgiven for thinking that this was all I'd accomplished this time around and things were now drawing to a close. But the call of the river was strong, and with so far to go to 68, I thought, why not try for another fishing level? At this stage I'd gathered nearly 50 extra bait since the last fishing clip, but curiously, my luck had now deserted me with random events. Across the last 1200 or so farmers, I'd only had 3 lamps in total, putting barely a dent in the number of bait needed at all. Past the 40,000 mark I went on my loot tracker for farmers, on to 76 hit points, and up to 100 bait in the inventory. Despite all this though, the dry streak on lamps had continued. Still 90 bait left for the level. The drop-off had been precipitous. More levels came and went. 76 thieving, 79 ranged, but no fishing clip this time I'm afraid. The bait and lamps just simply weren't forthcoming, and I couldn't really face delaying this update any further. Now I knew when going into this bonus grind for fishing that I would struggle for clips at times, with so many hours being needed for such a short update with each level. But, given the length of the farming and ranging grinds that I'm completing in tandem with it, I am still convinced that it was the right choice, rather than avoiding it on a technicality by dismissing Bob randoms when I had the wherewithal to train the skill and obtain the cape. That, to me, is what the game mode is all about. Yes, this current chunk is utterly stupid, but it is possible without backlogging a single grind. And by the end of it, I will have fulfilled my goal for the account of obtaining the fishing cape on an Xtreme One Chunk account via surely the most absurd but also the most direct route possible. I just want to reiterate then, that a pause between uploads does not mean that I've quit. I did dabble in producing videos on my main account for this channel to fill in such gaps between chunk updates, but in hindsight that was perhaps a misstep, and in future I would rather just keep it focused on Fish Chunk and any other potential chunk accounts that I decide to start in the future, should I hit a brick wall with this one. I'm looking at you, Mythral Dragons. Maybe the current stretch of lamps that prompted this ramble was just a blip. Time will tell. But with all that said, I have begun looking at a few creative ways to stay efficient, or at least as efficient as one can be, I suppose, during this mammoth task, including another of my cunning plans. But that'll have to wait for next time. As always, thanks for watching. Do keep on supporting the other chunkers out there. It sure is a weird pastime that we found for ourselves, but a strangely fulfilling one nonetheless, around which there exists such a great community. Good luck on your own bizarre grinds. Fish, Chunk, out.